Brazil, Sao Paulo issues a new lockdown due to the worsening COVID-19 crisis. Pope Francis visits northern Iraq as part of his historic trip in the war-torn country. And Ethiopia receives its first shipment of coronavirus vaccines. Hello and welcome to TeleSUR. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the south. Brazil's city of Sao Paulo has issued a new lockdown due to the worsening COVID-19 health crisis. State Governor João Doria said starting Saturday, bars and restaurants will only do deliveries, while malls and non-essential businesses will shut for 2 weeks. This as he noted that a new patient was placed in intensive care units every 2 minutes. With a new coronavirus variant from the Amazon spurring more infections, studies say almost 2,000 people have died in the past 24 hours, adding to the nearly 260,000 COVID-19 fatalities in the country. Brazil has the second highest coronavirus death toll in the world after the United States. Brazil of mishandling the pandemic, letting people die in order to advance its political agenda. Our correspondent Brian Mir in Sao Paulo has the details.
As a new COVID-19 mutation overflows Brazil's ICU units, social movement leaders are accusing the Bolsonaro government of deliberately letting people die to advance its political agenda. Taking advantage of poor road connections to Manaus during rainy season, it now looks like the government deliberately slowed down oxygen delivery.
70 people died in 1 week, and we expected the health minister to send oxygen by plane. But he sent it via Highway 319, which is unpaved, and environmentalists are fighting for it to never be paved. Because the agribusiness lobby is trying to use it to spread the fires deeper into the Amazon. So he used the crisis to play politics with Highway 319.
As far-right President Jair Bolsonaro continues to tell his followers not to wear masks, as his government works to sabotage state health departments from importing vaccines, and the death count rises over 250,000, some people are beginning to question whether he isn't deliberately letting people die to save money on social spending.
The Brazilian government is openly ultra neoliberal, and its project is dead. The more people who are hurt, the better for them. That's the project underway in our country.
Meanwhile, health officials around the world are worried that Brazil has become a laboratory for new COVID-19 mutations. Brian Mir, TeleSUR, Sao Paulo.
Thank you, Brian Mir, for that report. Protesters have clashed with police in Paraguay's capital as anger over the government's handling of the coronavirus epidemic spilled into the streets. Security forces fired rubber bullets and tear gas at hundreds of rioters who gathered around the Congress building in downtown Asunción late on Friday, while protesters broke down security barriers, burned road barricades, and threw stones at law enforcement. Citizens have demanded the resignation of President Mario Abdo Benitez as coronavirus infections hit record levels and hospitals are on the verge of collapse. As of Friday, Paraguay had nearly 166,000 COVID-19 cases and over 3,000 deaths. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has received the first dose of the Russian Sputnik V vaccine as part of the government's nationwide COVID-19 vaccination campaign.
After vaccinating healthcare workers and other frontline personnel, it was President Maduro's turn to receive the jab.
We were waiting for the vaccination of the medical personnel to be done first. And like I said to the people, I am fulfilling my promises.
How many batches of vaccine have arrived in the country, President Maduro?
We have already received 60% of the purchased Russian vaccines, and we are expected to receive a shipment of Chinese vaccines on Monday.
President Maduro got the first dose of the Russian Sputnik V vaccine, which was one of the 100,000 doses that made up the first shipment of vaccines that arrived in Venezuela. Each vial contains enough vaccine to give 5 people their first dose, and after unfreezing, it should be applied immediately.
There are a growing number of studies which indicates that the Russian vaccine is very effective and generates a strong immunity. I was reading a study that was carried out in Argentina and was even covered by Russia Today about the Sputnik vaccine. And its high efficacy. Thousands of people have already been vaccinated with it in Argentina. We are grateful for God and Russian scientists.
Governments are racing to obtain large amounts of vaccines for their countries, but this cutthroat competition not only puts poorer countries at higher risk, but also endangers the whole world as it leads to vaccine shortages. Delaying vaccination can also make room for new coronavirus variants to be born, for which the current vaccines might not be as effective.
There is a shortage of vaccines around the world. About 40 countries are using the Russian vaccine, while the European Union is carrying out more studies on it. So we'll see what happens. I have a lot of faith in you.
By the end of 2021 also includes foreigners, among them 6 million Colombians, and the government hopes at least 10 million people will already receive their jab by April as part of campaign's first phase. As each day, more and more countries began their vaccination campaign. The battle against the COVID-19 pandemic, which have paralyzed the whole world for nearly a year now, seems to have a chance to be victorious.
Getting the first dose hurt a little bit, but I am finally vaccinated. I don't shiver or feel feverish, but maybe I will be able to speak Russian.
We need a good laugh more than ever during these difficult times. But now, let's turn to Cilia Flores, the wife of President Maduro.
Let's see how Cilia is doing.
Women make up more than half of Venezuela's population, while President Maduro's son was among the thousands of volunteers who participated in the Phase 3 clinical trials of the Sputnik V vaccine in the country. Did it hurt?
No, it did not hurt.
Cilia is stronger than me. It did hurt a little bit for me, but I feel fine. I just feel a little feverosky.
But the illegal economic blockade by the United States has made the purchase of more vaccines very difficult.
They have stolen our money. We have been struggling a lot to purchase vaccines. We made an agreement with the Pan American Health Organization and the World Health Organization so that they can order the release of $300 million worth of gold, which is part of the nearly $2 billion worth of Venezuelan gold England currently withholds from us. But these organizations haven't done anything about it yet. However, we are still going to guarantee vaccines for the Venezuelan people.
President Nicolás Maduro and his wife Cilia Flores will receive the second dose of the Sputnik V vaccine in 21 days. Meanwhile, a batch of 500,000 Chinese vaccines are expected to arrive in Venezuela on Monday. The country also expects about 10 million doses of vaccine to arrive in the country by April as part of the country's vaccine deal with various providers.
More stories coming up, don't go away. Welcome back. Pope Francis continues with his tour in Iraq. On Sunday, he met Christians in an Asian Iraqi church torched by the Islamic State group in the town of Karakosh in 2014. After the Islamic State group was ousted in 2016, the Al Tahira church's marble floors and columns were restored, and the faithful gathered there on Sunday to welcome the 84-year-old pontiff. In his speech, Pope Francis has urged people not to lose hope in these days of global health crisis and great insecurity. He also asked people to say no to terrorism and the manipulation of religion before calling on women to be respected and protected.
Surely, there will be moments when faith can waver, when it seems that God does not see or act. This was true for you in the darkest days of the war, and it is true too in these days of global health crisis and great insecurity. At times like this, remember that Jesus is by our side. Do not stop dreaming. Do not give up. Do not lose hope. I would like to say a heartfelt thank you to all the mothers and women of this country, women of courage who continue to give life in spite of wrongs and hurts. May women be respected and protected. May they be shown respect and provided with opportunities.
The Afghan intelligence chief prosecutor Sayed Mahmoud Agha has been killed along with his bodyguard in a suicide bomb attack. Agha on his way to his office in the southern city of Lashkargah when a suicide bomber driving a car full of explosives targeted his convoy. 8 people were also injured in the blast. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack. However, the South Asian nation has been experiencing a rise in targeted killings, even as peace talks between the Taliban and the government continue in Qatar.
We were driving from this side of the road, and the vehicle which was the target was driving from other side. When my car got here, I heard the explosion. My friend, who was a doctor, got wounded on his face, and I got slightly wounded.
The West Bank city of Nablus has gone back into complete lockdown after spiking cases. The city governor Ibrahim Ramadan announced on Thursday a total lockdown for 1 week starting Saturday, which includes a ban on movement of vehicles and closure of all shops and industries. Also on Thursday, Palestine extended its coronavirus-related state of emergency by a month following an increase in confirmed COVID-19 cases. Israel has vaccinated more than half of its population with a first dose, but has so far provided the Palestinian Authority with only 2,000 vaccine doses. More than 2.5 million Palestinians live in the West Bank, with an additional 2 million in Gaza.
We did this, the closure of Nablus, due to the high numbers of people infected with the virus in the governorate, which led to the number reaching the red signal, which rings the alarm in the Nablus governorate. So sadly, we had to do this procedure. We know that the closure harms the economy. It harms the merchants and harms the poor, but the closure is only for public health.
Anti-coup demonstrators in Myanmar have returned to the streets of Yangon a day after a United Nations envoy urged the Security Council to restore democracy. Security forces have escalated an increasingly brutal crackdown on demonstrators, killing more than 50 people since the coup, but protesters rally again on Saturday. The generals have shown no signs for restraint despite mounting international pressure, including target sanctions by Western powers. The country's vital sector has been crippled by an ongoing civil disobedience movement, a campaign urging civil servants to boycott working under a military regime. However, workers have been threatened to be fired with effect from March 8 if they continue. Thousands of Indian farmers have blocked a massive highway outside of New Delhi to mark the 100th day of protest against a controversial agricultural laws. Farmers burned dummies and chanted slogans against the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Thousands have hunkered down outside New Delhi's borders since late November to voice their anger over 3 laws passed in Parliament last year. They fear that the legislation signals that authorities are moving away from a system in which an overwhelming majority of farmers sell only to government-sanctioned marketplaces. They worry this will leave them at the mercy of corporations that will have no legal obligation to pay them the guaranteed price.
This government is being obstinate, but they don't know that this is a community of food-producing people that they are standing against. Whoever has clashed with this community has been decimated in politics. This Modi government is delusional. In the coming days, you will see that this is no longer just a farmers' movement, that it has become a people's movement.
When farmers think about their land, which we consider to be our mother, that's what will motivate us, because if we lost that, then what will we do when we go back? We are sitting here for our land until these black laws are repealed. We will continue to sit here, so that's our motivation.
The Dalai Lama has encouraged people to take a vaccination against COVID-19 as he was getting his jab at a hospital in northern India.
My trusted friend, including doctor, they suggest should take this injection. So, in order to prevent some serious problem, this injection is very, very helpful, very good. So, those other patient also should take this injection for greater benefit. So that's very important. So I took that. So I want to share. More people should have courage to take this injection.
We're taking one last break, but stay with us. Welcome back. Ethiopia has received its first 2.2 million doses of vaccines against the coronavirus as it prepares to roll out its vaccination program. The doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine manufactured by the Serum Institute of India were allocated under the COVAX initiative, which is working to facilitate vaccine access for developing countries. According to the Ministry of Health, the vaccination campaign will initially target health workers.
It will start initially from health workers, who are the forefront in terms of vulnerability, but it will also include other frontline workers depending on who are giving essential services to the public and are at risk of exposure. And then we will be also giving for people who have comorbidities, chronic illnesses, diagnosed based on the also set criteria. And also, it will also be given for aged population who are also at risk and of morbidity and mortality from COVID-19.
Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has landed in Sudan for a state visit. Al-Sisi met up with his Sudanese counterpart, head of the ruling Sovereignty Council General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, in the capital Khartoum. The two leaders discussed several issues, including economic and military ties, as well as two nations' dispute with Ethiopia over a massive dam Addis Ababa is building in the Blue Nile. This was al-Sisi's first visit to the country since the overthrow of Sudan's former leader, Omar al-Bashir, in 2019.
We agreed on the importance of returning to serious and effective negotiations that aim at achieving a fair, balanced, and legally binding agreement on the dams filing and operating before the coming flood season, an agreement that fulfills the interests of three countries and help in achieving cooperation between our nations. We both had the same stand in rejecting attempts by Ethiopia to impose a fate, comply, and control the Blue Nile through unilateral measures that do not take into account the interests and rights of the two downstream countries.
Millions of people in Ivory Coast have voted in parliamentary elections 5 months after a presidential poll that was marked by violence. More than 1,500 candidates were vying for the vote of roughly 7 million people in a contest for the 255-seat National Assembly. In contrast to the bloodshed that occurred during the October 31st ballot, campaigning was calm as all candidates pledged to support peaceful elections and sign a code of conduct. According to opinion polls, President Alassane Ouattara's rally on Wednesdays for Democracy and Peace is expected to win an absolutely majority of the seats.
That's the first real pluralist election in 20 years. I see that there's no tension in the air. I've just spoken to the Minister of the Interior. He tells me that things are going well everywhere, and I hope that the day ends well as the count. Good luck to all the candidates.
Senegalese police clashed with protesters in several neighborhoods of the capital, Dakar, on Friday, including in front of a courthouse where an opposition leader made his first appearance since his arrest on a rape charge. A lawyer for Ousmane Sonko said he was being charged with rape and making threats, allegations that have led to clashes since his arrest on Wednesday between his supporters and police officers in several towns. 4 people have died in the violence. Sonko has denied wrongdoing and say accusations are part of a pattern by the authorities of making up criminal charges to block opponents from standing in elections.
I support our comrade Ousmane Sonko. For me, it's a plot, and it is a victory. But it has nothing to do with alluring and seeing. So promoting democracy has nothing to do with acts of delinquency. We have really built an emerging commune, and we have done enough promotion and openness to allow investors to come to the Medina, the Chinese and the French Ocean, so we don't allow bandits to come from elsewhere to plunder the Medina.
Protesters in Australia have taken to the streets in Sydney to commemorate an historic march for the LGBTQ rights. Protesters rallied through Sydney's Oxford Street along the road of the 1978 protest, which sparked the original Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras over 40 years ago. The protests, led by the LGBTQ community, carry banners calling for the end to Indigenous Australian deaths in custody and for equal rights for transgender people. Meanwhile, the official Mardi Gras parade was forced into the Sydney cricket ground over fears the usual crowds could spread COVID-19.
Our dynamism in the 1970s was this desire for justice. And I want to ask you, have we got justice yet? Have we got justice yet? Those of us who were active politically in the 60s and 70s like me, we had an energy and we knew where it came from. I remember that night when we broke through the cordon of police.
On Saturday, France has begun speeding up its national COVID-19 vaccination campaign, opening hundreds of vaccination centers over the weekend in Paris and across the country. The weekend drive comes after the French government came under criticism for a slow start of the vaccination campaign. Infection rates have stayed high for several weeks, and virus patients currently occupy 71% of the country's intensive care units. The country is still under a national curfew from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., with additional lockdown measures extended on Saturday to the region surrounding the northern port of Dunkirk. French authorities have reported 88,300 virus-related deaths, one of the highest tolls in Europe.
You know that we have 170,000 people over the age of 75 in Paris, and if we don't open on Sunday, it's for one reason. There's still not enough doses. That's all. We were ready to do it every day, even having extended hours. This is the case. We open longer and every day, and we also open more cubicles.
There are 12,000 doses available in Paris this weekend. We are not anymore in the situation of a lack of doses, but more precisely in the situation to manage to inject the doses to all those who want it. So we have changed faces.
And we come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.